A landlord storms into Judge Frank Caprio's courtroom with a lawsuit that shocks everyone. He wants thousands in unpaid rent from a woman who suddenly stopped paying. But the truth behind her silence, her suffering, and her disappearance is darker than anyone imagines, because the woman he is suing is no longer alive. Some stories enter Judge Frank Caprio's courtroom like quiet storms. They start small, almost ordinary, then crack open the walls of the human heart. This case begins with a landlord demanding justice for unpaid rent, cold numbers, missed deadlines, a contract he claims was broken without warning. But behind those missed payments lies a life no one took the time to understand. A woman who battled alone, hurting in silence, a woman whose final months were marked by fear, illness, and a loneliness that rent receipts can never reveal. And today, her story unfolds, not from her own voice, but from the echoes she left behind. Because someone has come to speak for her, someone the landlord never expected. Samuel Grant stands before Judge Frank Caprio with the fierce certainty of a man convinced he is the victim. 48 years old, wearing a tailored charcoal suit and polished shoes, he carries himself like someone used to being obeyed. His voice is sharp, impatient, and loaded with frustration as he explains that his tenant stopped paying rent for 3 straight months. He demands the full amount, late fees, court costs, and even emotional damages for the inconvenience. He repeats the same point again and again. A contract is a contract. His view is simple. If someone fails to pay, they must be held accountable. But when Judge Caprio calmly asks him for the tenant's name, the courtroom feels a subtle shift. The name he gives is Emma Caldwell. Emma is not there. Samuel insists that her absence is yet another sign of her disrespect. He describes her as unreliable, always late with rent, always making excuses, always claiming she was sick. According to him, she stopped responding to calls, messages, and letters. He paints her as someone who abandoned her obligations and vanished without a trace. But Judge Caprio's voice remains steady as he asks a quiet question that hangs in the air longer than expected. Did you ever check on her well-being? Samuel dismisses the idea immediately. He insists that a landlord's job is not to care for tenants. It is to collect rent, nothing more, nothing less. And for a moment his logic seems cold, even harsh. But he stands confidently, sure that the law is on his side. After all, isn't financial responsibility the foundation of any rental agreement? But then a young woman, sitting in the back row, rises slowly. Her hands tremble slightly, but her resolve does not. She is in her early 20s, holding a small folder against her chest as if it carries the weight of her entire world. When she speaks, her voice is soft but filled with pain. She introduces herself as Lily Caldwell, Emma's daughter. A ripple spreads across the courtroom. Samuel's expression freezes. He wasn't expecting family. He wasn't expecting anyone, because in his mind this was a simple debt case. Nothing complicated, nothing emotional. But Lily's presence changes everything. Judge Caprio invites her to speak, and her first words silence the room. She explains that her mother didn't stop paying rent because she was irresponsible. She stopped paying because she physically couldn't. She was battling a severe illness that worsened faster than anyone expected. An illness she tried to hide because she didn't want to burden anyone, not even her daughter. Emma was the kind of woman who smiled through pain and apologized for being sick. The kind who believed other people had bigger problems than hers. Lily's voice cracks as she recalls the final week of her mother's life. She describes finding unopened envelopes, medical bills stacked on her bedside table, and a phone filled with unsent messages. Emma was slipping away long before the world realized. And then Lily says the words that crush whatever certainty Samuel walked in with. Her mother didn't stop paying rent. She stopped breathing. Emma Caldwell died alone in her apartment. The courtroom falls into a heavy silence. Samuel's posture loosened, his confidence draining at the edges. For the first time since he entered the room, he seems unsure, almost human. He grips the edge of his folder tightly, as though trying to ground himself. Lily holds out a document, a death certificate. Her hand shakes, but her gaze is firm. A question hangs unspoken. How can a man sue someone who is no longer alive? And yet, Samuel's face shows a flicker of defiance. He insists that he had no idea. He claims he only wants what is owed. He argues that someone, anyone, should be responsible for the debt. But before he can continue, Judge Caprio raises his hand gently, signaling that it's time for the truth to guide the next part of this heartbreaking story. But what happened next left the entire courtroom speechless. Samuel Grant stands his ground with an air of indignation, insisting he is still owed the full amount. But Judge Frank Caprio turns to Lily with a tone that holds both respect and gentleness. He asks if she has anything further to present. Lily nods and opens the folder she has been clutching since the moment she entered the courtroom, and what she reveals shifts the tone of the entire case. Inside the folder are printed emails, pages of them, sent from her mother to the landlord months before she passed. Each message is short, apologetic, and carries the weight of someone fighting a private battle. Emma wrote that she was struggling with a serious illness, that she was in and out of the hospital, and that she needed more time. She expressed fear that she would lose her home while her body was failing her. She pleaded not for sympathy, but for understanding. Lily explains that she printed these emails after finding them in her mother's sent folder, buried beneath dozens of drafts written late at night. Emails Emma never sent because she feared sounding desperate or weak. Emails revealing she was drowning in both medical bills and fear. She presents hospital records, appointment logs, and a timeline showing that Emma was admitted to the emergency room twice in the weeks before she died. Samuel takes the papers with stiff hands. His confident posture begins to wilt. His eyes move quickly, almost nervously, across the text. The harsh edges of his personality soften as he reads lines like, "I'm sorry if this causes trouble. I'm doing my best. I just need a little more time." Judge Caprio asks Samuel whether he ever read these messages at the time they were sent. Samuel hesitates, admitting quietly that he had changed phone numbers during that period and hadn't updated his contact information. He also admits that he rarely checked the email linked to his rental business. It was easier, he explains, to rely on automated reminders. The courtroom absorbs this revelation in a heavy silence, but Lily has more. She presents a voice recording left unintentionally on her mother's phone. It begins with Emma trying to call the landlord's old number. Her voice is breathless, weak, filled with exhaustion. She explains that she is in the hospital again. She doesn't know when she'll be released. She apologizes for the delay. She says she will pay soon as she can stand again. Her voice trembles as she whispers that she's afraid of losing her home. Then the call ends abruptly, replaced by the soft hum of hospital machines in the background. Judge Caprio listens with visible compassion, his silence signaling deep respect for the woman whose voice fills the room one final time. Samuel stares down at the floor. For the first time, he seems to truly understand the depth of Emma's struggle. He mutters that he didn't know, that he never intended to cause harm. But his words feel small compared to the mountain of evidence presented. Lily continues, explaining how the last rent payment her mother made was done from a hospital bed. A nurse had helped her access her banking app. Emma insisted on paying as much as she could, even when her own health was crumbling. She feared being judged or misunderstood. She feared being seen as someone who didn't keep her word. Then Lily shares one final piece of evidence, a letter Emma wrote for her daughter, discovered after her death. In the letter, Emma apologizes for leaving Lily with debt. She apologizes for leaving the world too soon. She apologizes for not being stronger. And she reminds Lily, in soft, handwritten sentences, that she did everything she could. The courtroom grows so still that every breath feels amplified. How could anyone remain unmoved after hearing the voice of a woman who fought until her last moments? And if a contract binds two people together, shouldn't compassion bind them even stronger? Samuel's complexion pales. The weight of regret settles into his posture. His determination to collect money seems to evaporate in the presence of Emma's truth. Judge Caprio leans forward, his voice carrying both authority and empathy as he prepares to address the landlord's responsibility, the daughter's grief, and the moral crossroads now standing before them. Before the judge speaks, the narrator's voice deepens with emotion. Like this video, if you believe no one fighting for their life should face financial fear alone. The room waits for Judge Caprio's next words. But what the judge revealed next changed everything Samuel thought he knew. Judge Frank Caprio leans forward, his voice calm yet commanding. He addresses Samuel Grant directly, not with anger, but with a quiet authority that fills the room. "Mr. Grant," he begins, "how often do we consider the human story behind a missed payment?" His words hang in the air like a weight. A ledger cannot measure suffering. A contract cannot account for a life that ends too soon. Samuel shifts uncomfortably in his seat. the confident man who entered the courtroom now reduced to a figure of hesitation. He mutters, almost inaudibly, that he didn't know. Judge Caprio does not need more. The evidence, the emails, the hospital records, the voicemail, the final letter, is enough. Then Lily rises again. Her voice is steadier this time, carrying not only grief but courage. She recounts the last days of her mother's life. She tells of hospital rooms filled with the smell of antiseptic, the beeping of monitors, and the quiet strength Emma showed while fighting pain most people could not imagine. Lily speaks of her mother's love, the tiny acts of bravery she performed even as her body failed, and the relentless determination to honor every obligation she had. Samuel listens, but he cannot interrupt. He cannot argue with a story so raw, so real, so human. The courtroom feels as if it is holding its breath. Each word Lily speaks is a hammer against the walls of his certainty, breaking down the armor he built around himself. Judge Caprio now leans back slightly and allows a pause, letting the silence carry the gravity of Emma's struggle. He then asks Samuel, "Do you truly believe justice? Lies in collecting money from someone who can no longer pay, someone whose life ended in suffering?" The question is rhetorical, but it pierces Samuel deeper than any legal argument could. Tears start to form in Lily's eyes as she describes how her mother feared eviction more than illness. She explains that Emma had been working 2 jobs, saving every penny, and yet the final months were impossible. The money Samuel claims was never meant for greed, it was meant for survival, dignity, and peace. Samuel's hand trembles slightly. He glances down at the papers again, rereading the emails. He had never imagined a tenant's life could be so complicated, so full of hidden pain. I didn't know, he whispers, louder this time, but the words feel hollow, even to him. Judge Caprio then delivers a truth that resonates in every corner of the courtroom. Responsibility is not only measured in contracts, it is measured in humanity, compassion, and understanding. Money cannot erase life, nor can it honor it. We are tasked not only with judgment but with mercy. The room seems to inhale collectively. Samuel's face softens, his shoulders sag. He nods slightly, a quiet acknowledgement that the world he has navigated with strict rules and ledgers may not be enough to carry him through the moral complexity of this case. Lily takes a breath and continues, offering what her mother could not. She pleads not for money, not for revenge, but for acknowledgement. She asks for her mother's efforts, her struggle, and her courage to be recognized. And in that moment, the courtroom is united not by law, but by empathy. Judge Caprio looks at Samuel one final time before speaking. Can a man who profits from life's transactions forget the life itself? Can a ledger hold the weight of a mother's dying courage? His words echo in the room, challenging the very foundation of Samuel's initial argument. And then, a small smile appears on Lily's face. Not a smile of triumph, but of relief. The daughter who entered afraid of confrontation now witnesses the power of truth, speaking louder than any legal claim. She leans closer to the folder she carries, as if feeling her mother's presence beside her. Hit that subscribe button if you believe compassion should always guide judgment. But just as the courtroom begins to exhale, a final, unexpected twist emerges from Samuel's lips. He clears his throat, glances at the judge, then at Lily, and says something that none of them predicted. And that is when Samuel uttered words that left everyone stunned, reshaping the rest of the case forever. Judge Frank Caprio rises slowly, the courtroom instantly quieting as if every heart is waiting for him to speak. He begins with a voice that is both firm and tender, a voice that can hold authority without cruelty. "Ladies and gentlemen," he says, "we gather here to hear a dispute about money. A landlord feels wronged, a tenant is gone. But what is justice if it cannot recognize humanity?" He pauses, letting the question sink in. Contracts are meant to guide fairness. They are tools, not tyrants. They are not meant to punish the sick, the vulnerable, or those who have already endured more than any of us can imagine. The judge's eyes meet Samuel's. "Mr. Grant, you entered this courtroom certain that numbers, calculations, and policies would protect you. But life is rarely so simple. It is full of unseen struggles. Emma Caldwell was not irresponsible. She was fighting a battle she could not afford to lose, yet she tried, as best she could, to honor her obligations." Judge Caprio turns toward Lily, his voice softening. "And you, young lady, have shown incredible courage today. You have brought your mother's story into the light, giving her voice one last time. That is the most important act of justice any court can witness: recognition of truth, acknowledgement of sacrifice, and compassion for human suffering. He leans forward slightly, speaking directly to everyone in the courtroom. We are all quick to demand compliance with rules. We all want contracts, receipts, and confirmations. But what about empathy? What about understanding that every unpaid bill may carry a story that numbers cannot tell? Samuel shifts uneasily in his seat. He has no words, no defenses. Every legal argument he could muster has been stripped bare by the reality of Emma's life. And Judge Caprio continues, his voice rising with righteous conviction. There are laws for commerce, yes, but there are also moral laws written into the very fabric of society. One of those laws is this: we do not profit from another's suffering. We do not chase payment from those who cannot pay. We do not allow ignorance to become cruelty. The courtroom leans forward collectively. Even the stenographer pauses in her rhythm. Every person present feels the weight of Judge Caprio's words. He then delivers the lines that will resonate. Far beyond this day, Mr. Grant, the debt you claim does not exist anymore, not because the law permits you to collect, but because justice requires us to see beyond the balance sheet, beyond the ledger. Emma Caldwell gave everything she could. She fought, she tried, she loved. And today, it is our responsibility to honor that effort, not to punish it. A subtle silence follows. Samuel's jaw tightens. His mind races. He finally speaks, his voice low. I see now. I had no idea. I'm sorry. Judge Caprio nods, not judgmentally, but with a quiet assurance that the lesson has been understood. Apologies are meaningful, Mr. Grant, but actions are more powerful. You have the chance to right the emotional wrong, to respect the memory of a woman who is no longer with us. That is true justice. Then Judge Caprio addresses the courtroom as a whole. Let us remember that life is fleeting. The smallest act of empathy can outweigh the harshest judgment. The richest contracts cannot replace the human heart. And in the end, mercy and compassion are the measure of us all. The courtroom exhales. Even Samuel's shoulders slump as a mix of relief, shame, and understanding settles over him. He finally nods, a quiet acceptance that the pursuit of money cannot erase the pain of a life lost. Like this video, if you believe kindness and understanding are stronger than money and contracts. And yet, just when it seems the story has reached its conclusion, Judge Caprio signals for a final statement, a moment that will bring tears, redemption, and an ending that feels like a miracle waiting to unfold. Because what happened next transformed grief into hope, turning a courtroom dispute into a story the internet would not stop sharing. The courtroom waits in hushed anticipation. Judge Frank Caprio looks at Lily, then at Samuel, then out at everyone present. He gestures gently for Lily to speak one last time. She steps forward, holding her mother's letters close to her chest, her voice calm but trembling with emotion. My mother wanted to leave this world with dignity, Lily begins. She wanted to pay her rent. She tried. She fought every day to make things right. But life was unfair. She could not finish what she started, but she never stopped caring. Not for me, not for her home, not for anyone. Tears slide down her cheeks. The courtroom is silent, except for her words echoing with unbearable honesty. I ask not for money, she continues. I ask that her effort, her struggle, and her courage be recognized. That is the only justice she deserved. Samuel Grant, standing there moments ago confident and rigid, now looks smaller. He swallows hard and steps forward. Lily, I didn't know. I see now. I am sorry. His voice cracks. He extends a hand toward her, not for the debt, but as an act of acknowledgement, an attempt at reparation. Judge Caprio rises, his voice steady, and delivers the final judgment that leaves the courtroom, and soon the world. Stunned, Mr. Grant will waive all claims against Emma Caldwell, all debts, all fees, everything. Not because the law requires it, but because compassion does. Let this courtroom remember that mercy is the highest form of justice. The room erupts in soft applause, not for spectacle, but for relief. Lily's face lights up with a mixture of sorrow and joy. She turns slightly, holding the letters, whispering a quiet thank you to her mother. In that moment, the weight of grief begins to lift, replaced by the warmth of recognition and respect. Judge Caprio continues, Let this case be a reminder. Life can be harsh, contracts can be strict, but empathy is timeless. We may not always have the power to change what has already happened, but we have the power to honor it. Samuel nods again, his posture changed, softened. I will make a donation, he says quietly, to a charity in her name. Something to help others who can't pay, who are struggling the way she did. That seems right. Lily smiles faintly, tears streaming. Thank you, she whispers. That means everything. Judge Caprio addresses the courtroom one final time, his voice carrying the weight of the lesson learned by all. In every dispute, remember, justice is not only the letter of the law, but the spirit of understanding. When we recognize the human story behind the numbers, we elevate not just the law, but ourselves. The story spreads quickly. Clips of the case, condensed into narrative form, go viral. Millions of people across the country are touched by Emma's struggle, Lily's courage, and Samuel's transformation. Donations pour into charities that support tenants in crisis. Social media explodes with hashtags honoring compassion over contracts. And somewhere, if one listens closely, it's as if Emma's quiet voice whispers through every story shared online, that she fought, that she cared, that even in death her humanity was acknowledged. Hit that subscribe button if you believe every life deserves compassion and every struggle deserves recognition. Lily leaves the courthouse holding her mother's letters, her head high. Samuel steps back, reflective, a man humbled by truth and mercy. Judge Caprio sits, pen poised, heart satisfied that the scales of justice have been balanced not by money but by empathy. And though Emma could not speak, her legacy now whispers in every corner of the internet, reminding us that true justice is always human, always compassionate, and sometimes a miracle waiting to happen. This story is a reminder that law alone cannot define justice. Emma Caldwell could not pay, could not survive, but her courage and determination left a mark that outlives the rent she owed. Lily's bravery, Samuel's transformation, and Judge Caprio's wisdom created a moment where compassion triumphed over cold contracts. Stories like these remind us that every person behind a ledger has a life, a struggle, a heart, and that understanding, mercy, and human connection are more powerful than any legal document. If this story touched you, like this video to honor Emma's courage. Subscribe to the channel for more heartwarming courtroom stories, and hit the bell icon to never miss a moment where justice meets humanity. Share this video with friends and family to spread a message T. Empathy always wins, because in the end, justice is not only what we enforce, it is what we feel. And Emma's story proves that even in the darkest moments, mercy can shine the brightest.